God bless everyone. Today, I want to share a testimony of our sister Leah, a 71-year-old woman whose life was profoundly changed after experiencing a near-death encounter. Through this experience, she found healing from deep grief and rediscovered her faith. Her story also includes an encounter with Kathryn Kuhlman, a woman whose ministry left a lasting impact on her life. My name is Leah, and at 71 years old, I find myself reflecting often on the long and winding journey of faith I've traveled. It's been a life marked by both grace and challenges that have shaken my beliefs to their core. I live in a small, quiet town in the Midwest, where the pace of life moves slowly, like a gentle reminder of simpler times. As I look back, I feel the weight of every moment, every joy, every sorrow, and all the lessons I've learned along the way. I was raised in a devout Christian home, where faith was a guiding light. My grandmother, a woman of unwavering belief, was my rock. She took me to the healing services of Kathryn Kuhlman, whose name is still etched deeply in my heart. Those nights were filled with an undeniable sense of hope, as Kathryn spoke about miracles as though they were as common as the rising sun. She made God feel close, tangible, and real. It was during these services that I first learned about the power of prayer and the love of God in its most pure and transformative form. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at NDE today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith. As I grew older, life became more complicated. The loss of my husband, a kind and gentle soul who shared my faith, left an ache in my heart that seemed impossible to bear. I often found myself wandering through our home, haunted by memories of our laughter and love. In the quiet moments of solitude, I began to feel the weight of grief settling in. The doubts I had long ignored started swirling in my mind like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Did I truly understand the love of God? Was I deserving of His grace? Or had I somehow fallen short of His expectations? In my later years, I struggled with a sense of purposelessness. Each day felt like a battle, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on me. I longed to find meaning again, to feel the fire of faith burning brightly in my heart as it once had. I spent countless hours praying, seeking comfort in Scripture. But my heart felt heavy. The shadows of despair seemed to grow thicker around me. And although I clung to the promises of Jesus and the hope of eternal life, those truths seemed distant, as though hidden behind a thick fog. I found solace in the stories of healing and redemption I had heard in my youth. I remembered the powerful teachings of Kathryn Kuhlman, who spoke of Jesus' love as an all-encompassing force, one that could transcend even the deepest sorrows and heal the most broken hearts. As I turned the pages of the Bible, I felt the words come alive, speaking directly to my heart. Yet, despite the comfort they offered, I couldn't shake the feeling of being adrift in a sea of doubt. I longed for a sense of direction, for the light of faith to lead me back home. What I didn't know at the time was that a profound encounter awaited me, an experience that would forever change the course of my spiritual journey. I was about to confront my deepest fears and, in doing so, rediscover the unwavering love of God. This moment of awakening would pull me from the depths of despair and into the heart of my faith, where the whispers of the Holy Spirit would guide me through the darkness that had surrounded me for so long. Little did I know, the encounter that awaited me would redefine my understanding of grace, and rekindle the flame of faith that had been dimmed for so many years. It would remind me that even in our lowest moments, God is always near, patiently waiting to guide us back into the light. It was just an ordinary evening when the extraordinary happened. The day began with the sun casting a gentle glow through my living room window. And by nightfall, I found myself experiencing something I could never have imagined. The memories of my husband lingered in the air, like the sweet scent of blooming lilacs, a reminder of the love we had shared. It was in this quiet moment, filled with both grief and hope, that my heart was open to the miraculous and the divine love that had always been there, waiting for me to find it again. God was still with me. The flicker of light grew stronger, pushing the shadows aside. As it expanded, I could feel warmth filling the space around me. It was unlike any light I had ever known, pure and gentle, yet full of power. The darkness, which had felt so oppressive, now seemed to recede with every step the light took forward. And then, standing before me, I saw him, Jesus. He was not distant, not an abstract figure as I had once imagined him. He was real, present, alive, and full of love. His eyes met mine with an understanding that penetrated my soul. And in that gaze, I felt all my fears and regrets begin to dissolve. He wasn't condemning or distant, instead, his presence was a balm for my troubled heart. It was as if he knew every painful thought, every failure I had ever had. And yet he looked at me with such compassion, such grace, as if to say, "You are not lost, Leah," he said softly, his voice like a melody of peace. "I have always been with you, even in your darkest moments. You are not alone, and you are never too far from my love." In that moment, I understood something I had struggled with for so long. The weight of my past decisions, the doubts that had plagued me, and the grief from losing my husband, all of it was part of a larger picture that I had never fully understood. It was as if he was offering me a new beginning, a chance to reconcile the brokenness within me and to walk forward in his love. The light surrounding him grew brighter, and I could feel it infusing me with a peace I had never known. All the questions I had about my life, about God's plan for me, began to fade as I felt a deep sense of belonging, as if I was exactly where I needed to be. For the first time in a long while, I knew that I had not been forgotten, and that the love I had been searching for was there all along, waiting for me to open my heart again. "Your journey has not been in vain," he continued. "All the struggles you've faced, all the losses you've endured, have led you here, to this moment. And now, you are ready to begin anew." As his words washed over me, I felt my heart open in a way it never had before. The emptiness I had once felt was replaced by a sense of purpose, a longing to share the love and grace I had so freely received. I felt the weight of the past lifting, and in its place, there was an overwhelming peace and joy, knowing that I was forgiven and that a new chapter in my life had just begun. "I am with you always," he said, his presence filling every corner of my being. "Trust in me, and you will find the light that will guide you through every challenge ahead." In that moment, I understood what I had been missing all along. Faith wasn't just about knowledge or understanding, it was about trust, about surrendering to the love that God has for us, no matter where we've been or what we've done. It was about finding peace in his presence and knowing that we are always loved. No conditions, no judgments, just pure, unconditional love. As the light around me began to fade, and I slowly found myself back in the quiet solitude of my home, a profound sense of gratitude washed over me. This wasn't just a second chance at life, it was a new beginning in faith. The grief that had once felt insurmountable no longer held the same weight. I now understood that my husband's love wasn't lost, it was part of something much larger. An eternal journey of love and redemption that would continue forever. His presence in my life had shaped me, and that bond would never truly end. With this newfound clarity, I began to see my life through a different lens. The burdens of the past no longer consumed me, and I found a renewed sense of purpose. I reached out to others, sharing the message of God's love and grace, telling them that peace, healing, and hope were within reach, just as I had discovered. This was no longer about my personal grief or loss, it was about living in the light of God's love and helping others do the same. I felt a deep calling to serve, to share the message of hope that had so profoundly transformed me. In spreading His love, I discovered not only healing for my own soul but also the immense joy of bringing light to others. Every interaction, every moment of my day became an opportunity to reflect the boundless love that had been poured into me, a love that never fades, never falters, and never fails. This was the life I had been meant to live, a life filled with purpose, renewal, and unwavering faith. I was given a second chance. And with it, I embraced a new beginning, one rooted in love, service, and the strength found in His grace. And now, in my darkest hour, she was there again, offering the light of God's love that I had longed for. Her gentle presence was like a balm to my soul, soothing the deep wounds that had festered in the shadows of my life. The storm within me began to subside as she spoke, and I felt the grip of doubt, fear, and regret loosen, replaced by a profound sense of peace that I had not known for years. "Kathryn," I whispered, my voice barely audible as the overwhelming flood of emotions threatened to overtake me. "I've failed. I've lost my way. And I've let my fears keep me from fully embracing the love of God. I've allowed the shadows to consume me." She smiled, her eyes filled with compassion, and said gently, "Leah, you are not alone. We all face moments of darkness. Moments when we question our worth. But it's in these moments that God calls us to rise, to trust, and to embrace His love. You are not defined by your failures but by your willingness to open your heart to Him." Her words were a balm to my soul, soothing the grief and doubts that had long weighed me down. The darkness around me began to fade, replaced by the gentle reminder that God's grace is greater than all my shortcomings. His love, stronger than my doubts, began to shine through the cracks in my spirit, filling me with peace. I realized that my worth wasn't determined by my mistakes or losses but by the love God had for me. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen, known, and loved. Kathryn's words dissolved the barriers I had built, and I understood that God's grace had always been there, waiting for me to turn back. "Let this be a turning point for you, Leah," Kathryn said. "You are never too far gone. God is always waiting with open arms, ready to embrace you." In that moment, I felt like I was given a second chance, not just at life, but at faith. I was ready to step forward in His light, trusting in His goodness, and believing that my journey could now be filled with hope and peace. "I know the pain you carry, the doubts that have haunted you," Kathryn continued, her gaze full of understanding. "But you must remember that God's love is not dependent on your perfection. It is unconditional, and it is always available to you, no matter how far you have wandered." I nodded slowly, feeling a sense of relief wash over me as I absorbed her words. "But how do I start again?" How do I find my way back to him after so many years of running? As Kathryn placed her hand over my heart, I felt an overwhelming sense of warmth and comfort. Her touch was gentle, yet filled with a deep, unwavering strength. It felt as though the very essence of love and understanding was being poured into me, soothing a part of my soul I hadn't even realized was aching. It was a tenderness that seemed to heal the wounds I had carried for so long, like a balm applied to the deepest hurts of my heart. I had spent years struggling with grief, doubt, and a sense of spiritual distance. But in that moment, all of that began to fade away. You start by choosing faith, Kathryn said, her voice soft yet firm, echoing with both wisdom and compassion. Her words seemed to settle into my being, wrapping around me like a protective embrace. Faith is not a one-time decision. It's a daily choice to trust, to believe, and to walk in the light of God's love. He is always waiting for you to return, and He will guide you every step of the way. Her words carried an incredible depth, not just as a gentle reminder but as a call to action. It was a truth that resonated deep within my soul. Faith wasn't something you could just choose once and then move on from. It was a journey, a commitment to continually trust and lean on God, especially in the moments when everything seemed uncertain. For so long, I had wrestled with the doubts and fears that life had brought me. I had searched for meaning in the wrong places, relying on my own understanding and trying to fill the emptiness with things that could never satisfy. Kathryn's words made it clear: true fulfillment didn't come from the world's expectations or accolades, but from a daily surrender to God's love. In her presence, I felt as though I was being gently led back to a place of peace, a peace I hadn't experienced in so long. I could feel the weight of the burdens I had carried starting to lift. Piece by piece, Kathryn's steady voice continued to fill the silence, encouraging me to take that first step of faith, to reach out for the love of God that was always available, no matter how far I had strayed. Her reassurance that God was always waiting for me, that His love never abandoned, filled me with a sense of hope I hadn't known in years. With each passing moment, I felt myself letting go of the doubt, the fear, and the regret that had clouded my heart for so long. Kathryn's presence seemed to breathe new life into me, awakening a deep desire to reconnect with the God who had always been there, patiently waiting for me to return. This was not just a moment of spiritual guidance, it was a life-altering reminder of the power of God's grace and the importance of walking in His light. I felt a stirring within, a sense that this was just the beginning of a renewed relationship with God, and I was ready to embrace it, step by step, with faith, trust, and a renewed heart full of love. Her words struck deep within me, resonating in the core of my being. The weight of the darkness that had once overwhelmed me seemed to loosen, like heavy chains falling away. I could feel the heaviness of despair that had clouded my heart for so long begin to dissipate. In its place, something new and brighter started to emerge, a flicker of hope, a spark of faith that had lain dormant but was now being reignited. You are never too far gone, Leah, Kathryn said, her voice filled with a gentle yet profound compassion. God has always been with you, even when you couldn't feel Him. And now, He is calling you to remember the love that you have always known, to embrace the power of faith that transcends every fear and doubt. Her words felt like a lifeline, a direct connection to the truth I had neglected for so long. I could feel something stirring deep within me, a longing that had been buried under years of doubt and grief. It was a call to embrace God's love once again, to surrender the burdens of the past, and to step fully into the light of His grace. I realized that the journey ahead wasn't about attaining perfection or having all the answers. It was about being willing to choose faith every single day. To trust that no matter how unclear the path ahead might seem, God's love would always be there, guiding me forward. I began to understand that even in my moments of weakness, He was there, offering strength and comfort. This wasn't about achieving some ideal version of myself, but about accepting His love as it was, and trusting that He would lead me through each challenge, each doubt, and each moment of uncertainty. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace settle in my heart. It wasn't the absence of challenges or doubts, but the assurance that no matter what I faced, I was never alone. God's presence, once distant and obscured by my own fears, was now a beacon of light leading me forward. The despair that had once seemed insurmountable was being replaced with a new clarity, a new vision of what faith could truly offer. Kathryn smiled at me, her eyes filled with encouragement. Remember, Leah, faith is a journey, and every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to the light of Christ. I nodded, a sense of hope blossoming in my heart. I could feel the warmth of God's love surrounding me, lifting me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt ready to step forward into a new chapter of my life, one filled with faith, purpose, and a commitment to living out the love I had rediscovered. And as I embraced that truth, I knew that this encounter, this moment with Kathryn, was not just a turning point in my spiritual journey, it was a divine invitation to live with the faith I had always known but had forgotten to fully embrace. With each word, I felt a sense of renewal wash over me. The weight of my regrets no longer held me captive. Instead, I felt empowered to move forward, to walk in the light that was now illuminating my path. As Kathryn's presence began to fade, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had been lost, but now I had found my way back. The darkness that had once consumed me had been dispelled by the light of God's love. And I knew, without a doubt, that I was not alone on this journey. Remember, Leah. Kathryn's voice echoed softly as she disappeared into the light. Faith is the key. Trust in God's love, and you will find peace and purpose in His grace. I stood there, feeling the warmth of her presence still lingering within me. I knew that my journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to embrace the future with renewed faith and hope. I was not alone. God had never abandoned me, and His love would always guide me through the darkness. With every step I took, I would walk in His light, carrying the message of His love and grace with me, as Kathryn had once done for me. I knew that I had been given a profound opportunity, a chance to leave behind the shadows of my doubts and embrace the fullness of God's love. Kathryn's presence, so warm and reassuring, acted as a beacon of hope, reminding me that no matter how deep the darkness, there was always the possibility of light. And that light was Jesus. She continued to speak, her voice filled with the kind of strength and compassion that could only come from a life lived in full devotion to God. The key to overcoming darkness is trust, she said, her words cutting through the fog of fear that had clouded my heart. When you trust in God, you are not alone. He is with you in every moment, guiding you, loving you, and giving you the strength to face whatever comes your way. Her words were like a balm, soothing the rawness of my spirit. I felt something inside me stir, a longing to step out of the shadows and into the light, to embrace the love that God had always been offering me but that I had been too afraid to accept. Kathryn's reminder that God's grace was greater than my doubts, that His love was deeper than any regret, began to transform my heart. I realized then that my faith wasn't about perfection, it was about trust. About opening my heart to God's presence. No matter how broken or uncertain I might feel. Your past does not define you. Leah, she said. Her eyes filled with unwavering compassion. God has always seen you for who you truly are, His beloved child. Worthy of His love and grace. All He asks is for you to trust Him and to let His love fill every part of you, so that you can shine His light into the world. The shadows that had seemed so insurmountable only moments before began to recede, replaced by the warmth of God's love. I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. In that moment, I knew that I was no longer walking alone. Kathryn's words had rekindled the fire of faith within me. A fire that I had long neglected but now, with every passing second, burned brighter and stronger. I looked up at her. The woman who had long been an inspiration to me, now standing before me as a living testament to the power of God's grace. Thank you, I whispered, my voice full of gratitude. Thank you for reminding me of the truth I had forgotten. She smiled gently, her presence radiating peace. It is not I who has healed you, but God's love, she said softly. Let this moment mark the beginning of your renewed journey. Live each day in His light, and He will show you the way. As her figure began to fade, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. The darkness, once all-encompassing, had been replaced by the light of God's love and the reminder that I was not beyond redemption. This moment, this encounter with Kathryn, and the truths she had shared, had opened my eyes and heart to the healing power of faith. I was no longer burdened by the weight of my doubts or regrets. Instead, I felt ready to step boldly into the future, guided by God's love and grace. As I looked around at the now brightening space, I knew that my journey had just begun. With renewed faith and purpose, I was prepared to walk in the light of Christ, trusting in His plan for me and embracing the joy of knowing that I was, and always would be, loved. I had carried for so long and embraced the light of Christ once more. Kathryn's words wrapped around me like a warm embrace, gently urging me to surrender my fears, doubts, and regrets, and to step into the light of God's love. As she spoke, I felt the weight of my past, of the grief, the fears, and the distance I had placed between myself and God, begin to lift. The darkness that had once seemed impenetrable now felt like something I could overcome. Like a shadow receding in the warmth of the sun. I understood, in that sacred moment, that the true path to healing lay not in my own strength, but in God's unfailing love, which had never left me, even when I had turned away. Kathryn continued, her voice a soft but steady guide. In John 8 verse 12, Jesus tells us, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. This is the light that will guide you through the trials ahead. It will shine in places you never thought possible. Embrace it, Leah, and you will find peace beyond your understanding. Her words sank deep into my soul, and I knew she was speaking the truth. I had been walking in darkness for too long, and it was time to trust in the light of Christ. With each verse Kathryn recited, my heart swelled with hope. I realized that I didn't need to fear the future or be weighed down by my past. The love of God was always there, waiting for me to return, waiting for me to trust in His plans. I want to believe again, I whispered, the tears finally spilling from my eyes. I want to feel His presence in my life." Kathryn's smile was gentle, full of compassion and understanding. "You already do," she said softly. "God's love is never far from you. It's always within you, waiting to be embraced. This is your moment, Leah. This is your moment of transformation." As she spoke, I felt a profound shift in my spirit. The fear that had clung to me for so long began to melt away, replaced by a newfound strength and peace. I knew that I was not alone in this journey. God had been with me all along, even in my darkest hours, guiding me to this moment of awakening. Kathryn gently placed her hand on my shoulder. "Let go of the burdens you carry, Leah," she said. "Lay them down at God's feet, and He will carry you. Trust in His love, and it will be enough." In that moment, I felt a sense of release, as if a weight I had been carrying for years had finally been lifted. I could breathe deeply, freely, for the first time in what felt like ages. I knew that this was the beginning of something new, an opportunity to rebuild my life on the foundation of faith, love, and trust in God's plan for me. With Kathryn's words echoing in my heart, I made a silent vow to embrace my faith once more, to trust in the light of Christ to guide me, and to share that light with others. The darkness had been a necessary part of my journey, but it no longer had the power to control me. I was walking in the light now, and I would carry it with me, wherever life took me next. As Kathryn continued to speak, I felt a profound wave of gratitude wash over me. Tears streamed down my face as I whispered, "Thank you for being here, for showing me the way back. I have been lost for so long." Her smile deepened, and she gently took my hands in hers. Her touch radiated warmth and love, as if she were imparting strength directly to my soul. In that moment, I knew that I was no longer alone in my journey. I felt a deep sense of peace settle within me, as if all the years of struggle and doubt had led to this moment of divine revelation. "You are not lost, Leah," she said with a voice full of compassion. "You are on the brink of a new beginning. Embrace this moment. Let it fuel your faith." Her words felt like a balm to my wounded spirit, and as they sank into my heart, a wave of understanding washed over me. I realized this encounter wasn't just a fleeting experience in a place of darkness, it was a divine appointment, a sacred intersection of my life and Kathryn's ministry, orchestrated by God Himself. He had heard my cries, seen my despair, and had sent Kathryn to remind me of His unfailing love. For so long, I had carried my regrets, doubts, and fears, allowing them to separate me from the peace that God's love offers. I had become trapped in the cycle of questioning my worth, my faith, and my purpose. I had looked for meaning in things that ultimately could not satisfy the deep longing within my soul. But now, in the presence of Kathryn and in the light of God's truth, I understood that all those fears and doubts were merely shadows. They had no power over me when I embraced the light of Christ. I felt the weight of years of pain, grief, and loneliness begin to lift from my heart. It was as if a heavy burden had been removed. And for the first time in so long, I could breathe deeply and freely. I realized that I was not just recovering from the darkness of despair, I was being reborn. Each breath I took felt like a step forward into the light of God's grace. I knew that I had to take the first step toward healing, to trust in God's plan for my life, and to believe that it was never too late to turn back to Him. Kathryn's words filled me with hope and purpose. She had spoken of prayer as the bridge that connects us to God. And for the first time, I truly understood the power of that connection. Prayer was no longer just a ritual, it was a lifeline. A conversation with the Creator of the universe. The one who knows me completely and loves me unconditionally. I realized that prayer could bring clarity and peace. That it could transform my heart and mind, allowing me to find the strength to move forward. As Kathryn continued to speak, she dismantled the walls I had built around my heart. She reminded me of the truth I had forgotten, that God's love is relentless and transformative. Each word she spoke was like a gentle hand, breaking the chains of despair that had kept me in darkness for so long. And in their place, a sense of purpose emerged, an understanding that I was being called to share the message of hope and healing with others. Just as Kathryn had done. I felt empowered to reclaim my faith, knowing that God was waiting for me with open arms, ready to guide me home. I had spent so many years running from Him, hiding behind my doubts and fears. But now I understood that I could turn to Him at any moment. He was always there, ready to offer His love and grace, no matter how far I had strayed. In that defining moment, I chose to awaken to a new reality, a life where faith, prayer, and the Word of God would be my compass. A life filled with renewed purpose, joy, and a commitment to sharing His love with the world. I understood that it wasn't about striving for perfection or seeking worldly accolades. It was about living each day with an open heart, trusting in God's plan, and embracing the light of Christ. As Kathryn's voice resonated deeply in my heart, I knew I was no longer walking in darkness. I was ready to embrace the life God had in store for me. I felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that I was walking in His light, guided by His love. I no longer felt lost, but rather, I felt anchored in the eternal truth of God's promises. With renewed conviction, I made the decision to step forward in faith, trusting that every step would be guided by His love and grace. I knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but I also knew that I would never have to walk it alone. God was with me, and I had the strength and courage to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I was ready to be a beacon of light in a world often overshadowed by fear and doubt. I was ready to embrace my true purpose, to live a life of faith, compassion, and love. And as Kathryn's radiant presence enveloped me, I felt the dark tendrils of despair loosening their grip. Her words echoed in my heart, resonating with a truth I had long sought. In that moment, I knew I was ready to walk into the light, to share the love of Christ with others, and to live boldly in the truth of His grace. The journey ahead was one of redemption, healing, and a renewed connection to God's love. And I was ready for it. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at NDE today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith.